Hello, everyone. This is Isha, and I hope you are all having a wonderful day. I'm so excited to bring some inspiration using Altenew products for the next couple of months. And for today's video, one idea turns into two completely different cards. I also want to quickly mention the Black Friday sale on the 27th and 28th, which we all are waiting for. You can shop for your most needed products at that time. There is also a shipping discount. All the details are listed below in the description box so you can check it out. There's also a chance to win a $20 gift certificate. All you need to do is follow me here and Altenew. If you follow me on Instagram and leave a comment on the post where I shared the card, you get a second entry. I will pick a winner and pin the comment here on the 3rd of December. Now, for both the cards, I'm using the Charming Cluster stamp and die set from the November release. The coordinating dies include two floral clusters and six sentiment words, which makes it super versatile. All the supplies are listed below, so don't forget to check them out. Let's start our card number one, which is gold embossed vellum and watercolor layers. I'm starting with a piece of watercolor paper to create a soft background wash. For brushes, I'm using my silver black velvet number 10 and number 6 brush, a jar of clean water, kitchen paper to wipe our brushes, and the artist's watercolor tubes in Mars Red and Burnt Sienna. I also added some pink watercolor from the artist's Watercolor 24 pan set. On a ceramic palette, I squeeze out a tiny amount of the tube colors. I start by wetting the watercolor paper, then dropping in Mars Red and Burnt Sienna. I'm starting light. We can always build up the layers. Remember, watercolors always dry lighter, so keep that in mind while adding color. This wash is very simple and beginner friendly, just mixing lights and darks and letting the pigment flow. Intermediate painters can push shadows and highlights more. This looks perfect to me, so I'm adding some soft pink with a smaller brush to brighten the colors. And now I'm going to heat set the panel. And when it's dry, I'm going to add a few flakes of red for extra movement. Next, I'm stamping the images onto vellum. I place the vellum onto my Stampwheel 2.0, securing it with a bit of washi tape. In case it didn't stamp perfect, I can double stamp it without any problem. Notice I already have one version embossed with copper embossing powder. But for this card, I'm stamping again, this time in rose gold embossing powder. First, I use a powder tool to remove static as we don't want any stray powder everywhere. Then I ink the stamp with Versamark clear sticky ink. Stamp the images onto the vellum with light pressure. So we get a fine thin line. And pour Altenew rose embossing powder over it. You'll see I didn't do the best job with the powder tool, so I'm using a fine brush to remove the stray specks. Well, it doesn't need to be perfect. Then I heat set it using my heat tool. Keep the tool moving so the vellum won't warp much. And honestly, watching the powder melt always makes me happy. And it's always a wow moment. The rose gold looks absolutely stunning on vellum. Now I die cut the watercolor wash panel and both the embossed vellum images using our coordinating dies. I plan to layer the vellum cluster slightly offset over this colored die cut. Before adhering, I add a few more flicks of red and pink where the floral cluster will come. On the back of the embossed vellum, I'm applying tiny amounts of liquid adhesive. Remember, only behind the embossed areas so the adhesive won't show. Then I offset the vellum slightly over the watercolor die cut. Moving on to the sentiment, I'm using the word for you, and for that, I first stamped it using raspberry ink. But I didn't like the result much, so I restamped in heartbeat ink, which gives a richer red. Here, the stamp wheel comes to our rescue. It's so easy to restamp the image without the fear of spoiling the paper. I die cut the sentiment plus one more blank word and then adhere them together for a sturdier layered piece. Here I have my Tim Holtz distresser tool. I scratch the edges of my panel for extra texture. I love this torn effect a lot. To tie the panel together with the gold embossing, I brush some gold watercolor from the Ganzai Tambi Starry set. I'm adding color along parts of the distressed edges, just as accents, not the whole edges. To assemble our card, I adhere the floral cluster with 3D foam tape. Then I'm adding the sentiment with liquid adhesive. Now to mat this panel, I'm using Concord and Ninth light pink cardstock. I remove the centerpiece so I can save the inside piece for another project because we are going to adhere this panel to a white card base. Now I'm mounting everything onto a white card base. Finally, I add ombre glitter drops in pixie dust. These are from Pink Fresh Studio and one of my favorites. I'm using liquid adhesive and my dual tip tool. And now the card is done. Soft, delicate, and the gold edges tie everything together with the gold embossing beautifully. Now we are going to move to our card number 2, shall we? Here I'm using the image cluster embossed with copper embossing powder. This time I'm taking the design a couple of steps further by adding color to the back of the vellum, adding background texture with stencil, and finally creating a soft watercolor wash behind the floral clusters. So to create the watercolor wash behind the florals as before, I am using a pink color again, but keeping it very soft and only in the center area, fading outwards towards the edges. I let this piece dry while I add color to the vellum cluster. Turn the vellum and here I'm using warm sunshine ink and a micro blending brush to add color to the center of some of the petals and the floral center. Then I'm adding Pinkalicious ink to build gradient tones. Light and dark in different areas make the flowers come alive. For the leaves, I'm adding olive ink, and here I felt the flowers are too pink for my taste, so I wanted to mute the colors. I decided to add a touch of deep iris ink in some of the areas to tone down the pink. Next, I want to add more texture to the background. So I'm using the vintage motif stencil and I'm adding pinkalicious ink mostly around where the floral cluster will come. I am building the color gradually, fading it towards the edges. A larger brush would have made this faster, but this works too, since I still have to build my brush collection. Perhaps I should also take advantage of the Black Friday sale. To assemble our card, I am applying liquid adhesive behind the embossing on the vellum and adhere the cluster onto the stenciled background as we did in card number 1. For the sentiments, I'm using for you, XOXO, and hello. Using the stamp wheel and black ink, I'm going to stamp them. Once stamped, I am going to die cut them. Here I felt I need a touch more color, so I used the leftover watercolor scrap panel from earlier to cut the sentiment shadows. Nothing goes to waste, right? I love that. I offset the sentiment layers slightly and assemble them. To avoid splattering onto the florals, I cover them with the stamps. Then I'm adding black splatters using the black watercolor. The splatters are an afterthought. I attach 3D foam behind the For You sentiment and adhere it to the card. For XOXO and Hello, I just adhered it with liquid adhesive. Finally, I mount the panel onto a white card base, and the second card is done too. Bright, textured, and full of color. Here are both the cards side by side, totally different feel from each other. Card number 1 has gold embossing on vellum, distressed gold edges, soft watercolor base. Card number 2 has copper embossed vellum, ink blended coloring on the back, pink wash, and stenciled texture. Which one is your favorite? I hope you enjoyed watching this creative process and found the techniques easy and inspiring. And don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification so you never miss on new crafty inspiration. Again, as a reminder, don't forget to check products in the description box below. Happy crafting and bye bye.